Good evening. Welcome into the Inquirer podcast. It's Jeremy Werner, Derek Piper live at State Farm Center as Illinois improves to 2-0. The number 25 ranked Illini get a little bit of a scare from Oakland, who kind of has a business of doing this right now to Big Ten teams. Gave Ohio State a scare earlier this week, lost that one 79-73. And tonight they had a 3-point lead with about 10 minutes left. But Illinois goes on a 22-3 run, clamp things down defensively, especially Quincy Guerrier and Terrence Shannon. Fantastic nights for those guys. Guerrier, 13 points, 10 rebounds. A day after his daughter is born, the 24-year-old bringing some dad strength to these Illini here, Late Piper, which you and I know something about. Terrence Shannon Jr., 15 points, 5 assists. Dain Dainja strong off the bench as well, 10 points, 7 rebounds. Derek Piper, they hold Oakland, which made 14 of 35 threes against Ohio State. Oakland just 5 of 20. And I think that 20 number is as important as anything. Held Josh Golke, who gets his buckets up, gets his shots up, held him to 6 shot attempts. Terrence Shannon Jr. doing most of that work. But initial reaction, Derek Piper, to an ugly but impressive close for Illinois.
It was ugly. It wasn't very good basketball for a good stretch there, especially you talk a lot about going into this game, and I was really emphasizing a better start, more intensity, more focus, just more crisp basketball, and you're down 8-0 before you can blink, and Brad's calling a timeout. But, yeah, I do think that ultimately the story of the game is defense down the stretch. The fact that Jack Golke was the leading scorer in the game there in Columbus, hit 6 threes. He took 18 of them. And this has been a staple of Brad Underwood teams in the last few years, at least, is that not only is it a situation where they make it tough on three-point shooters, they make it tough even to get off threes when they really want to lock you down. So Terrence Shannon Jr.'s effort of getting through screens and obviously using his athleticism and just being that focused on making a tough night for Golke was huge. I thought that, Brad mentions also Ty Rodgers. When you look at Lampman was another one on the perimeter that was a guy that was going to get up a lot of threes. And then really Quincy Guerrier was like you said, the dad strength. I mean, he was the story down the stretch, and he's been huge in closing time. He was against Kansas. He was huge in this one as well. And as soon as he drew the primary matchup on Trey Townsend, who was really hurting Illinois for a big stretch there, really with Oakland shooters not having a great night or not having a lot of opportunities to get their game going, Townsend was keeping Illinois at bay with his ability to score. And then once Guerrier locked that thing up and made things tough, Oakland goes on a long scoring drought. Illinois takes control of the game and ultimately wins one that's not going to make people feel super inspired and probably still kind of like have a hard time balancing who this team was against Kansas on a one-game sample size versus what they've seen the last 2 games. But you do have to win ugly sometimes, and there is obviously credence to that. But there's some things for Illinois needs to clean up, and in particular guys need to play better, and we'll talk about that. But Oakland does deserve credit too. Like Greg Campy's a very good coach. They've done this to Big Ten teams. I outlined that if you're rated in the game thread that they've probably outperformed their against the spread number in pretty much probably the last 5 or 6 games against the Big Ten, and they did that again tonight.
Yeah, Derek, they muck things up defensively. Brad Underwood called it a junk 1-3-1 zone. That obviously hurt Illinois and kind of bogged them down a little bit. But offensively, they run some really good actions as well. And but Illinois, I think their defense is going to be really good. You and I talked about that coming into the season. This is a team that could be really strong defensively. I think one of Brad Underwood's best, because you just look at the length, the size, and if they are dialed in defensively, like Terrence Shannon was tonight on Golke, I think they can be really good. Ty Rodgers is a phenomenal individual defender. Coleman Hawkins, who will get to a frustrating night, first half especially for Coleman. But Quincy Guerrier is a strong defender. Harmon can be. I don't know if he's a great defender, but he obviously cares about it. I think this team can be really good defensively, but the questions we have about them offensively with point guard and shooting, free throws, three-pointers, whatever it is, this is a team that's probably going to win some games in the 50s or have to play some games in the 50s and win it. This is not going to be a pretty team. Doesn't mean it can't be a good team. And I do think there were good things at the close of this game. The fact that they do have the veterans that know what to focus on and were dialed in defensively, even when things weren't happening offensively. That was encouraging, but there are a lot of offensive concerns for me about this team that, frankly, we kind of expected, Derek.
No doubt. Yeah, they are going to play in some rock fights. And we kind of anticipated that going into the season, knowing the point guard issues, knowing the three-point shooting, and obviously free throws as well that continue to plague this team. The stuff from the charity stripe is really maddening for fans, and I get it. The problem is there are a number of guys that were really feeding into that percentage last year that are still getting the free throw line. Dain Dainja, Ty Rodgers, one at the free throw line. Although, a guy like Terrence Shannon stepping up and missing them here recently has been frustrating because he's a guy that over the course of his career has been close to an 80% free throw shooter. So that's part of it. Illinois at times takes too many threes and they haven't made enough of them. Now I think that someone like, Marcus Domask is going to, I think, settle in a little bit more from the outside and make more shots from the perimeter. Luke Goody had a couple of good looks, especially one in the corner that I think you'll live with. But, yeah, and then let's just call it right now. Illinois doesn't have a point guard. They don't. No. They're not even pretending to have one.
It's Marcus Domask. Marcus Domask is your point guard. And listen, he's a big body. I think he's a capable ball handler. I'm really interested to see what he does against a team like Tennessee with their athleticism. Campy attacked some of that, a lack of athleticism today. It's Domask right now. And that's a problem. That's a big roster problem. And I'm concerned it'll put a lot on Dre Gibbs-Allhorn's plate at some point. And I don't want that. Because, listen, Dre Gibbs-Allhorn, great debut. There's going to be some ups and downs. I thought he forced some things early, but he's the closest thing you have to a point guard, and I just don't think that's fair to him.
I agree. Yeah, I thought that the way they used Ty tonight made sense in terms of, like, putting him around the free throw line extended. There were times he was kind of playing in that dunker spot on the baseline, which it puts him around the basket both for rebounds and just for those physical finishes, but he's not a guy that is playing in actions to create shots for other guys. That's just not what the reality is. We've seen enough of a sample size now between the exhibition and this that I don't think Illinois is even pretending that he's a legit quote unquote point guard anymore. So can you win with that? I think that's a question in terms of not having a real one.
Certainly makes you stronger defensively. But,
no, it does. It does.
But offensively, it's kind of a big concern.
Yeah, and I think that Coleman, it's going to put more on Coleman too, and Coleman needs to be. We're going to probably spend a handful of minutes talking about him if we really want to dive in on this, but that's why he needs to be more steady in terms of, because I feel like him and Marcus are the two main guys that can make that a easier transition when you don't have that floor general, because Coleman as an operator in the high post at the top of the key making decisions. There's times where it gets really dicey. Coleman makes some questionable decisions, but if he's more solid and able to, he ends up with 5 assists. So he made some good passes. He had a really nice one to Quincy Guerrier late.
Good second half for Coleman, yeah.
Yeah, I'll give him his due on that for sure. But I think that is something that when you really get into those games, you mentioned Tennessee, you're going to face the better part of your schedule. It's those guys that, as far as a facilitating role, that need to really probably wear a lot of that for Illinois until a guy like Dre develops, and we'll see where it goes for Ty. But right now, it's just they're not putting a lot on his plate as far as that goes.
I'll give him this. Terrence Shannon, after he got over, like, I'm just going to bully my way to the rim, which he's doing too much still. Like, I still want to see that mid-range game he talked about and we saw during open practice. I think that can make him just so much better. But 5 assists for him tonight. I do think he's creating passing better, and it's a pretty good passing team. It's just, can they break down a defense to get in those situations? And then can they make shots? 4 of 16 from the three-point line tonight. Domask 1 for 4. He hasn't started off very well from 3 this season. Was he 2 for 10 through a couple games? Goody didn't get any of his to go down, even though they were good looks. We'll get to Brad Underwood here coming up, but that still is a big concern. We'll get to your questions on the live YouTube channel. Send those in. Super chats are always appreciated, but we'll get to your questions coming up. But here's Brad Underwood and what he had to say about this game, some things he liked.
Night where we didn't make free throws, we didn't make layups, we didn't make dunks, and we didn't make a three. The flow, the disruption, that's everything our program is about, is finding a way to win a game when none of those things go your way. It was really ugly. And I love that. It's you wish you'd made a few, but we didn't. And you've got to find a way to win ugly games. And tonight we did that with an unbelievable defensive effort, and we beat a good team. And excited to pull away late, and the last 7 minutes were pretty good. And put this one in the W column, because that will help us with the net, and it'll help us with Ken Palm and all the analytics as we move on down the road.
All right, Brett Underwood building up Oakland there, who does well in the non-conference. As you said, Derek, they give some high major teams issues in the non-conference. They usually finish in the middle of the pack in the Horizon, so I don't know if it's going to be a great net win for Illinois at the end of the season. We'll see. I like Greg Campy as a coach a lot. They got some talent there, and they could do well in that league. But I do think that they faced some adversity in these first two games. Mm-hmm. Eastern Illinois, you knew they were going to get worn down. But they faced some real adversity in these last 10 minutes, and I think they got humbled in the last two games compared to what they felt after Kansas. And is that a good thing for them going into Tuesday night against Marquette, where they will be an underdog at home against one of the best teams in the country, number 5 right now, the Big East champion last season that returns 8 of its 9 best players from last year, Derek? So do you think they'll come out with a better effort against Marquette, because they'll need it?
I mean, they have to. And I think that even looking at the Eastern Illinois start, and even tonight, I never really questioned what their intensity level would be against Marquette, because it's almost impossible. You almost have to not have a pulse to, come into 16,000 and face the number 5 team in the country and be flat. Like, I didn't think that was going to be a circumstance for them. But I think kind of big picture in terms of staying hungry and being pretty coachable and some going through some hard practices and really addressing some certain areas. Some humble pie is probably good for this team after Kansas. You don't want them to get too satisfied with where they are, and understand that there's still quite a bit to clean up. And if they were playing some better teams early in terms of post Kansas here in this week window, they could have gotten beat. They could have gotten beat. So this is something that they've got to be able to go in and address. Offensively, there's some things now, this is kind of a one-off in terms of the matchup. You're not going to see this 1-3-1 matchup zone, but I think in general, it's just kind of Terrence, being, you mentioned to me during the game, where's the mid-range game? Being able to show some of that, be a little bit more under control. Coleman fixed whatever the heck is going on mentally with you. His attitude's been terrible. I'm just going to say that flat out, I think.
He's wearing his emotions on his sleeve, and it's not all looking like it's good emotion. He's frustrated with his teammates, and that's not what you want to do. I think there's been a stark difference of what Quincy Guerrier's brought on the court at times with his body language and his focus and all those things. And then Coleman ended the game well. I want to mention that, but he was a really frustrating first half to watch that, especially as they were going into halftime. One time I saw him at timeout, he was wearing his emotions on his sleeve, and it wasn't great emotion.
No, that's not to say that he can't.
Right.
As a leader, you do want to be able to, confront your teammates at times and say some things as far as keeping them solid. And I don't want him to just. I'm not trying to, different guys react differently to certain things. You can show emotion, but there are times where you're a guy that's looked to be as a tone setter, a guy that's been in the program longer than anybody, that you got to hold together a little bit more. So I think his struggles have led to him being emotional about it. There was the Eastern Illinois game that was the case. I know that at the end of the first half, he had a bad turnover, and then you watch him over on the sideline. He's kind of hovering around the huddle and not really in there, and then. Justin Harmon pump fakes a 3, takes a contested shot at the rim, and Coleman punches the pad on the basket, and he's kind of chirping on his way off the floor. That's just not what you want to see out of a guy that's, you want more calmness, more cool-headedness for a guy that's
senior.
You're going to rely on. Yeah, senior. And so,
and emotion it can be great sometimes. He gives you energy, he gives you emotion. Kansas was phenomenal for him. Like, he played phenomenal against Hunter Dickinson. I thought that energy, can bother Hunter, it can bother other teams, but also can give you. But that was positive energy. That was positive emotion. The negative emotion on the court. Listen, maybe we're nitpicking here, but it was apparent. It was apparent on the floor.
Yeah, and I don't want to just talk about that either. I think that his play has had some moments where he's just
8 points, 8 boards, 5 rebounds tonight, but most of that was second half.
You'll take that, obviously. Second half for sure. I think just in general, some of the turnovers that he had, some things you want to clean up for sure. There have been some. I saw a clip on Twitter, and I know that it was yelled at by some people when it happened of just kind of and I know that Mike Latula mentioned it on your guys' podcast, and just kind of the help defense, and he was caught in some bad positions on drop. I know against Eastern, and there was some times where he was just turning his back to the play, and you just got to have more awareness. He's got to. I feel like those are plays where he's just maybe getting caught up a little bit in that emotion. He's frustrated about something, and he's not as engaged and locked in as he normally is. Coleman's a good player. He's talented, and obviously very important and versatile to this team. So I'm not writing him off. I'm not saying that he's been killing you because you're still 2-0, and he's going to be very, very important against Marquette. I just feel like it's fair to want more out of him and more steadiness as you go forward.
Yeah, especially when we're talking about him like all Big Ten, NBA draft. Like that's the expectation, right? And I think that's what he wants. So you got to get a little bit more from him. But Quincy Guerrier, man, real big positive tonight. 13 points, 10 rebounds. Can we call him a closer, Derek? Both offensively and defensively, 6 points, 5 rebounds, I believe, or 3 or 4 rebounds after the last 8 minutes of this game. But most importantly, went on Trey Townsend and shut him down for the last 9 minutes as Illinois went on that 22-3 run. Guerrier, we saw him help close that game against Kansas, made some big buckets, some big rebounds. You can tell Brad Underwood has recruited that guy 3 times, Derek.
Yeah, man, they've tried so hard to get him here, and he finally is here, obviously, as a 24-year-old, and you'll take it. I mean, the fact that he's played, this is now going into his 5th year at the high major level. He's had some real successes. His 2nd year at Syracuse, being an all-ACC guy, and at Oregon had some disappointments probably in terms of his expectation level. So he's learned a lot. He has been in a lot of high-level games, and to be able to be down the stretch and just kind of what it takes to win. And it's like a lot of, as Brad was diagramming in the post game, it's been a little bit of everything. I think against Kansas, obviously he had a big corner 3, but also he was driving to the basket in the free throw line. Tonight it was his defense. It was also some offensive rebounds, some tap outs, and he's definitely someone, as Brad is still kind of constructing and kind of just feel based also on a given night. Who has it going? What lineups do I like? Quincy is consistently being that as he goes down the stretch too. So how nice it would have been. We can kind of sit here and say, man, if only they had him to guard EJ Liddell a couple of times, had him to guard Dante Scott a couple of times. But right. him guarding Trey Townsend was the answer, where for a lot of the night, Illinois didn't have one against that guy.
You just answered. It's a piece they haven't had. It's a piece they just have, a big, strong, athletic, versatile, dynamic play. He can just do a little bit of everything, and he does everything pretty well. Yep. To have that piece is really good going into Big Ten play, and to have it next to Coleman, to have it next to Dainja, and then all 3 of them can be on the court at the same time. They went big at certain times. I love the front court versatility on this team. Big questions at guard. You got one of the best 2 guards in the country. Domask and Goody can shoot it a bit, but man, the front court has so much versatility to it moving forward here. Ty Rodgers, bucket getter. Derek, 10 points, 5 of 8 from the field, a couple runners there. Still want to see him with a left hand around the rim, but a pretty nice night for Ty Rodgers, at least giving them something offensively. And he was great defensively.
Yeah, no, you'll take that night from him for sure. Being able to hit the runners in that free throw line, extended area. Also, catching on the baseline, going up and finishing. Probably, there were a couple of bunnies that he missed that he could have got up there, 15, north of 15 points potentially. But that's where he really thrives. We saw it last year, him around the basket with his rebounding, with his ability to absorb contact. Yes, the left hand is still kind of the glaring omission right now in terms of his package around the basket. But, and then defensively, where you look at the other shooter outside of Golke didn't get a lot of opportunities. His intensity and he's a big athletic guard that has a nice wingspan, can really move and be physical with you. So yes, while offensively he's limited. He's limited, especially in the context of a point guard. Like he's not that, but yes, he can guard on the perimeter and disrupt some people, and then some opportunities to attack the basket. I mean, that's very well within the asking range for what he can do. So I like that out of him.
Yeah, and he knows who he is. All right, let's get to some of your questions coming up. If you want to weigh in on the live YouTube, we'll take some of those questions. Always love the super chats as well. We'll talk a little bit about the rotation as well. But first, let's hear from one of our great sponsors.
Let's talk about home field apparel since the start of the season. There are a lot of collegiate apparel brands out there, but we wanted to partner with Home Field because their designs are the best out there. Some of Illini Inquirer's favorites are the basketball ringer tee, the rose tee, and the 1980s long sleeve with the script Illini. It's great. Be sure to check out homefieldapparel.com, filter by Illinois, and see what we're talking about. And our listeners get an exclusive deal using code Illini23. Using that code Illini23 gets you 15% off your first order. We all know you're wearing Illini gear, so if you're in need of a refresh, we really think that you should check out Home Field Apparel, which has the best designs, and these shirts, guys, are really comfortable. Their designs are super unique, and a lot of thought goes into each concept. There's really nothing else on the market like what Home Field is doing. You can find them at homefieldapparel.com and use code Illini23 for 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com.
All right, Derek, let's talk a little bit about the rest of the production tonight. Justin Harmon, just 1.6 minutes for Justin Harmon, 12 minutes for Dre Gibbs-Allhorn. Quiet night for him, 0 of 3. Did get 2 boards in his time there, but he was kept quiet most of the night. Luke Goody got some good looks, played 18 minutes, 2 rebounds, no points, though, 0 for 2 from 3. And no Amani Hansberry tonight. I think that's a lot to do with Dain Dainja and Quincy Guerrier and the way they played, but anything you make of those guys?
Yeah, not too surprising as far as Amani goes. You want to play Guerrier, you want to play Dain, who had it going, and it was really, for a while there, the best thing Illinois had offensively was feeding him inside, and it's probably another night where you look back at the film and probably would have liked to get him a few more touches because he was that impactful around the basket. But, I mean, there's going to be nights where Amani doesn't play a lot or at all. That's just going to be the reality of it, and you hope that he just continues to stay ready when you do need him in case of foul trouble or a night where someone's not playing that well, and he's going to go in there and compete hard. But, yeah, Luke Goody, you're certainly probably wanting a little bit more. Definitely want those shots to go down when he is open. He's getting good looks because that's really what he's out there for. He does, athletically doesn't give you a ton in terms of some other guys, maybe defensively and whatnot. But, yeah, and then Harmon and Gibbs-Allhorn, it kind of speaks to, number one, Dre, forced the issue a little bit. It's going to be a situation where there's going to be ebbs and flows. It's a freshman. It's not super surprising. Harmon, he's been quiet recently, since the Kansas game, which I thought he was pretty darn good in, and then the last 2, as far as the regular season, he just hasn't done a whole lot. So I'm not writing him off. I still think he's going to be someone that within his moments going to obviously show as a tough and someone that can rebound and check a guy defensively, but just a little quiet. Want to see a little bit more, but wouldn't be surprised if he shows up against Marquette and does some good things.
Terrence Shannon plays 37 minutes. Not a lot of room for Harmon either. And they went with Ty Rodgers tonight with 24 minutes in that backcourt. All right, Derek, let's get some of these questions on the YouTube channel before we get out of here. Kyle says, why have slow starts becoming our calling card? Our last false start was against Nebraska last January. Yeah, slow starts, man. 8-0 in this one. Was it 15-6 against EIU? What do you credit that to, Derek?
I think a lot of times it's kind of just the urgency and the intensity of a team. I know that tonight, you face this 1-3-1. It is a situation where you got to figure it out, and it takes you out of your stuff. Like Illinois, normally against a man defense, wanting to put the ball in Coleman's hands at the top of the key, run that zoom action quite a bit, which is you're pinning down in the corner, getting the dribble, a handoff, and kind of cutting out of that action. Illinois has not had the same type of ball movement, same type of off-ball movement either in terms of cutting and just the flow within their offense. But Oakland does that to you. They kind of throw you off a little bit. I thought Illinois didn't do a good job of getting into the gaps, driving lanes. So I think that some of that was just Illinois not figuring out and not attacking well enough in the 1-3-1. And then, they let Golke hits a tough three, and then Coleman had a turnover that led to a transition three, and all of a sudden it's 8-zip. But yeah, just kind of beyond this one game sample size, it's something that continues to pop up. And I think it has a lot to do with a little bit of urgency, a little bit of just early game execution. And that's kind of where you want someone like Terrence just to say, all right, I'm recognizing this as a key spot where my team is lacking. I need to assert myself. And as the leader, it usually does fall on your shoulders. And I'm not saying it's all him, but you'd hope that he's able to help sort that thing out.
Yeah. Chad asks, what is Illinois trying to do offensively? There's no movement at all. Tonight, that had to do with the zone. I mean, 1-3-1, people I've seen commenting like there's 4 guys standing around passing the ball. Well, that's kind of what you have to do. You got to penetrate. But Derek, offensively, what'd you see tonight?
Yeah, that was it. I mean, I think they did do they did a better job as the game went on of getting the ball to Coleman or Ty kind of in that high post area, and really being able to use that as an entry point to kind of collapse the defense. And then the baseline, hitting the baseline was good to them. Hitting Quincy on the baseline, hitting Ty a couple of times on the baseline was certainly good. On that note, though, to kind of revisit, is I thought that if you move them on the perimeter enough and kind of create that angle to drive, and then all of a sudden that really creates the collapsing nature of a defense. Illinois didn't have that. And I think that, watching the game against Ohio State against Oakland, Ohio State ultimately was getting downhill so much and putting a bunch of fouls on Oakland that now you look at Illinois' free throw shooting. Maybe it was a good thing that Illinois didn't shoot 33 throws tonight like Ohio State did. But that was something that I just thought Illinois would get to the hole a little bit easier. They found Dainja, which was good because Oakland doesn't have that size. And they didn't make their threes. When you're going to face a zone, usually 3-point shooting is really, really important. And if you're not going to make them, it's going to make an offense look bad. But in terms of their just overall scheme and purpose, it was outside of their normal because of the 1-3-1.
Yeah, I thought they got some open looks, and they got some dunks, right? Some baseline dunks from some of the ball movement that they had. They just put on them, and the free throws, man, it's a huge concern. Huge concern for this team when they get into these closer games against better opponents. Scotty B asks, is Domask
I mean, it can a little bit. We've seen that happen. I just think that some of his shots he's missed from the perimeter are just ones that he's going to make. I think that's just a little bit of it is him missing some threes that he normally is able to capitalize on. But I don't know. Outside of that, he is being asked to kind of be in that situation to initiate some offense, and maybe he's just kind of figuring that out. He's played with the ball in his hands as he did it at SIU, but I think it's still too early to tell to kind of say, hey, that role is really hampering him. But we'll see how it goes. It's something that always gonna have to make up for, and he's one of those guys. I just think overall, still probably picking his spots to where, and I think that Brad will even have a feel for it, maybe drawing up some sets like, hey, we want to get Marcus in a mid-post action because he's really good in that. He's really good.
I love him in the mid-post, man. Like, he had a turnaround today that was impressive. Like, he is comfortable doing that. And, you get in a Big Ten play, you get a guard on him. Like, that's going to be booty ball. Do it with Marcus Domask. Yeah,
I mean, he's just so under control. I mean, I've said it before. I think that little turnaround that he has from like 8 to 10 feet, it looks like a shot you shoot in your driveway. It's just like he's so in rhythm, and you can't speed him up or frustrate him. So I think that's something that Illinois will get him in spots and looks, and I think that's probably something that will just progress as the season goes on. Hold on one second. I'm not sure why I can't hear anything. Can you hear me? I can't hear you for some reason. Try it this way.
All right, sorry about that. I'm back in here. I hope you guys can hear me. I believe you can. So we will wrap this up. But yeah, Mike out. Can't hear Jeremy. Jeremy seems to have gone out. Yeah, that happened. Derek, I'm back.
All right.
I'm back. So we're wrapping this up. Love the technical difficulties. My mic just gave out on me.
Back.
So I switched to the headphones here. Just final thoughts as we get into a huge game Tuesday against Marquette. Like, Illinois is 2-0. They didn't get upset in one of these games. It's not always the prettiest early in the season, but as you gear up for one of the marquee matchups of the season, you have it at home. This is one of them that you want to get. That would be a huge boost, more so than Oakland and the net, as Brad Underwood was talking today. So what do you think of this matchup?
It's a huge opportunity, and Marquette's very good. I mean, Tyler Kolek is the engineer, that offense, ability to hit threes, ability to set the table and be able to facilitate. He was one of the highest assist point guards out there in the country last year, and they bring back quite a bit from last year's team. So that was a very hot team down the stretch of last season. It's a good offensive team for sure. So Illinois is defensively going to have to be locked in and really see if they can disrupt Marquette and make things difficult for them. So I think that it's going to feel like similar to Kansas. Like Kansas was a high level matchup. Marquette maybe has a little bit more depth than Kansas does, at least at this point in the season. It's a huge chance to add a quad one on your resume, one that really matters on the stretch of March and your seeding and everything like that. And it'll it's unfortunate that Kansas won. For as good as Illinois played, and for as much as that was a head-to-head, like, let's go at each other, let's show what we really got, that it really doesn't mean anything, unfortunately, in terms of like actual value. This one will. This will mean a ton. And I think that knowing that some of Illinois' other big challenges, at least in the first 2 months of the season, are going to be away from home. So try to use this building to your advantage. Try to win this one because, obviously FAU on the road or neutral, and then Tennessee on the road. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what we got, and I'm excited to have another reference point because I'm going to be conflicted. Like, is Illinois that team against Kansas, or is Illinois what we've seen the last two games? It's going to be have to be proved, obviously, against the Golden Eagles.
I think this team's going to be a little bit similar to last year, Derek, and I think they can compete and beat with anybody in the country. But I also think traveling on the road to Penn State or traveling on the road to Rutgers is going to scare me with this team. I think that's going to be the case with this team. So, but as we saw last year, when you play, you beat a team like this, that's probably going to finish, whether it's top 20 or top 5 in the country. It makes a huge difference on Selection Sunday because Illinois might not have got in with that Texas win or UCLA, or would have been in the playing game or something like that. So these go a long way once you get to March. And I think it could just prove that, hey, this place is really tough to play, and that this team, the veterans, it makes a difference. You're going to need Terrence Shannon to be one of the best players in the country on Tuesday. That's always the case. He's played pretty well these first couple games, played great against Kansas. You're going to need the defense to be like it was tonight, really good and give you a chance, but you're going to have to make some shots. And that's where I get a little concerned with this team is the ability to get those open shots and then to make them and then to make the free throws. But they can put it together for a night, that's for sure. It's just you want to see be able to put that together consistently because if they don't, they're going to miss some opportunities in this non-conference.
Right, yeah, that's why you need to be able to have Terrence step up and look like a all Big Ten type of guy. And I'll give him credit, even when it hasn't been super pretty, especially early in games, both against Eastern and against tonight, he's found ways to just kind of stay at it. And when the game's over, his stat line looks a whole lot better than maybe you would have even anticipated. And obviously you wrap in the defense, which I appreciate that out of him. I think that last year he maybe wasn't as dialed in on defense night to night. It does feel like maybe now he's a little bit more focused on that and willing to make more of a consistent effort out of that. So we'll see we'll see as that progresses forward. But no doubt, I mean, you need Coleman. It's one of those where you hope it's a full game of very good Coleman, and we know that he's had games where there are big matchups, and I know I have to cross check his name here, but it's Oso Igurado for Marquette. That's like Coleman, projected NBA draft pick, and a guy that's a 6'11" big man. It's got skill. It's a good passer for them. So I think the matchup and just kind of seeing another guy that's on a draft board and seeing if your guy can step up and make a big impact is going to be important. And you hope that Illinois offensively doesn't go through a huge rut because you look now, I mean, it's a small sample size, but Marquette number 7 in the country offensive efficiency this year. They were number 7 last year as well, a team that shoots the three well. If you mess around and go 4 for 16 from 3 and shoot 50% from the free throw line, it feels like it's going to be hard to beat a team like Marquette with how much offensive firepower they've shown to have. But you're going to have to try to win with defense, but also have some shots go down for yourself.
Yeah, and shout out the live chat. Tyler Kolek did leave tonight's game.
Oh, boy.
They beat Ryder. He left the game. This is from the AP. Hobbled off the court and into the locker room with just under 8 minutes left and did not return. So something to pay attention to. If they don't have Tyler Kolek, they're obviously a very different team. You and I were reminiscing about that Marquette game 2 years ago. That was ugly. Had an 8-point lead with about 5.5 minutes left. And Andre Curbelo took over the game and not in a good way. Listen, there are moments I loved Andre Curbelo, watching him, covering him. That was a terrible, terrible moment. Obviously, he got injured a lot that year and I think hit his head the game prior, but that was a tough one. It was a tough one to lose up to there, and it really sparked Shaka Smart's big turnaround up there. Obviously, Shaka Smart said no to Mike Thomas back in the day here at Illinois. Didn't work out for Texas, but certainly working out for Marquette.
It is, yes. And I do remember that game very well.
No Kofi.
No Kofi.
A lot of Omar Payne.
Yeah.
Coleman was good. Trent Frazier was good. Curbelo, 4 of 18 with 7 turnovers in that game.
That's hard to do, man. And he just kept shooting. That was the other thing. Like he kept taking like turnaround shots around the free throw line. Took a couple threes for
trying to live up to the Mike DeCourcy, Jeff Goodman preseason All-American talk. That's what he was trying to do.
Yeah, put that on those guys. Those guys are to blame for sure. But it was a brutal performance. Illini fans will be glad to know that Marquette. That was I think maybe the one and only year they got of Daryl Morcell. So you don't have to worry about that guy anymore. The former Illini killer from Maryland, and then obviously at Marquette as well. So that was one to not really remember. If anybody checked out Deer District, though, like you and I did after the game, I think you would appreciate what they're rocking with up in Milwaukee. But, yeah, I think they're hoping, obviously, for a different result on Tuesday.
Yeah. All right, that'll do it for Derek Piper and I. Thanks to all the live YouTube listeners. Appreciate you. Sorry for that little gaffe there with my microphone midway through, but thanks for sticking with us. More than 250, 300 people on the live YouTube at this time. Appreciate you guys and all the support you give us. Thank you for listening to the Illini Inquirer podcast. Wherever you get us, follow us, rate us, review us. We appreciate all of that. And we'll have plenty of content coming from this game. And, of course,
we're going to wake up early in the morning and do an Illinois football game as well. It's no sleep November, no days off November here at Illini Inquirer. We got plenty coming for you. Everybody have a great night. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you tomorrow right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.